Hi, everybody. This is the Eight Paths podcast. I am your host, Odysseus, and this is my friend Melanie.
Hi, everyone.
So, we did a podcast on her channel, on her YouTube channel, and we're doing one on mine. So, if you like what you're seeing and you're hearing, follow, give us both a follow, and then check out ours on hers. And she has a lot of very cool guests that she interviews and she talks to. And it's also similarly a very chill vibe. So, if you want to see something, I mean, what's a recent one that you would like people to go ahead and check out that you have?
Well, the one that's probably going to come out in the next couple of days, so it'll probably be out by the time you post this one, is an interview I did with this astrophysics professor at Princeton
Hmm.
University who has done a lot of research, discovered a lot of exoplanets. He talks about his travels. He talks about peeing accidentally next to a snow leopard. um, and he talks about the idea of whether or not we are alone in the universe. Like,
Hmm.
is there other life out there? And he talks about black holes and just a lot of cool stuff. So,
That's super interesting. And I'll wait to see that one. I'm going to watch that.
thanks.
Absolutely. So, starting with who are you and what do you do? You're a musician similarly to me, and you're also an actor person. So, this is fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm a singer. I don't my repertoire is a little bit more narrow than Odysseus's. He does a lot more than I do. But yeah, I've mostly focused on classical singing. I grew up singing. I started singing when I was 7 years old. Actually, I started singing when I was younger, but I started taking voice lessons when I was 7. I pursued acting and singing and did some off Broadway as a kid. And then as I got older, I kind of focused more on singing and started to study classical voice when I was like 15, 16-ish, maybe. Uh,
Okay. Yeah, that
and then,
that really fits because a lot of people they for some reason 7 and 8 is kind of like right when you start and you like go hardcore. Same here, violin and piano at like 8. So it's and then it's like 15, 16. Like I stopped at 15. I came back like after a year of being done. And I was like, I want this now. And then 16 is when it was like hardcore. So similar there. It's interesting.
yeah, it is. A lot of musicians do tend to start when they're young in general. Because I think it's just something that, I mean, you can start later in life. I'm sure that's happened before. But if you start when you're young, you kind of tend to be more likely to go in that direction.
Especially if you
Um,
think about like the idea that you need your it's physical memory. You know, it's your finger memory, it's your hands memory or your throat memory. And if you've been doing that for I don't know 10 plus years, you know, as a 10-year-old starting, by the time you're 20, you've already been doing it for 10 years. That's
right.
so different than starting at 20 or 25. And so it's intimidating for adults, especially because they're busy. But like I teach adults and they definitely can do it. They're more serious about it than a kid is. So that makes it go, okay, you can probably do this. Problem is, they're too busy and they also don't see it, you know? A kid, similarly, like when you're older, you kind of get attached to a future that you start developing, which is a good thing in most cases. But as a child, if you develop that sort of that desire and that curiosity young, you know, it's just different because as an adult, you're not gonna really do that. You're gonna be like, I'm gonna be busy next year. I'm gonna be busy the year after that. Do I really see this going anywhere? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of plays into it a little bit.
There's like the whole idea of like having perfect pitch, which
Mm,
took a course on like music in the brain when I was doing my master's in voice, which I just graduated from. And
congratulations, I saw.
and it was so interesting. We learned all about the brain. And one thing that we were learning is that there's something called the critical period, which is between the age of like, I think it was like 2 and 4
Two and
when you're a
four and a half ish, like right before five, and then you lose that ability. Really, you're almost more kind of stuck at relative pitch at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it must not stop there. It must also there must be like this sense of like I'm guessing that there's like these things that you can learn about music at a really young age that are harder to um, absorb as deeply when you're older.
Do you think this is a question because I'm very like I love this stuff. Do you think that as you get older, your mind is already sort of going, I know this fact, and that fact means this, that. Because you know everything, like air quotes, you know stuff. As a child, you don't. So what happens is everything that's abstract, you can absorb better. But once you're older and you're like, I know this, and that means this, and that connects to that, you're made almost like bogged down by the information overload. So like you can't pick up abstract things as well because you always constantly need to connect it to something else. But as a child, it's like you're learning everything for the first time. You're learning the world for the first time. So you probably like specifically with note relations, for instance, you're looking at this interval versus that, and you're going, hmm, that just means I need to create a new language in my head when I'm seeing that and hearing it. As an adult, you're not thinking about that. You're thinking that note is like three half steps up, you know? I don't know. I think you're thinking way more pinpointed as an adult, whereas kids, it's just like, give it to me. I don't know, that's my theory.
Yeah, I think it's a really unfortunate thing in our society that people kind of get more closed-minded. And I guess this has potentially always been the case with humans. I don't really know. Not
Ooh.
maybe society, but I think it's definitely prevalent in our society. Um, People get more and more closed-minded, and they believe that they know everything, and they believe that they're right. And I think that is harmful to not only things like learning music and stuff like that, but it's also harmful to conversation. And it's just it causes a lot of divisiveness because people aren't open to listening to each other as much, which is really, I think, relevant to the conversations that people are having today.
You think that it's also, because that sounds so much like, have you seen that recent Winnie the Pooh movie?
No, I didn't.
I haven't seen it, but I saw reviews on it, and they were saying how a lot of people, a lot of older people really loved it because it really connected to how, as you get older, that knowledge of stuff just kind of, it's almost like ignorance is bliss to a degree. So as you're saying, it really does happen as you get older. And I think it's a consequence of experience. Like that's part of the reason why creativity and imaginativeness can get destroyed, specifically because of, you could say, the realness, almost the crude nature of life, almost. There's a nature of life where it's like, oh, that just happened and it's real. And like, I just lost my dog and that's a real thing that can happen. And it's so abrupt. It stops. It sounds kind of depressing talking about it. But that, as an adult, you kind of grasp that, you understand it. As a kid, none of these things have relevance. What's the word I'm looking for? Is there relevance? Whatever. None of these things. Say it again.
They don't matter as much.
They don't matter as much to a child because they're just not grasping it at that degree. It's very
Yeah.
fascinating. So I have a question about your practice. As a 8-year-old, what was your practice like? How much of that was pushed onto you? How much did you do on your own? And then as you got older, what were the differences? Like 16, now what was it like?
I mean, to be honest, when I was young, like when I was 7, I don't think I practiced that much. Like I practiced in the sense that I rehearsed. Like if
Hmm.
I did, I would do shows and stuff, right? So I would memorize my lines. I memorized so many lines when I was a
Sure.
kid, like reading back and forth with my parents. Um, and I would practice the songs and stuff. And I was supposed to practice more than that, but I really didn't when I was a child. I just kind of, but I did all my work, like I was always prepared for rehearsal. I was always prepared for my lessons. Um, but I don't think I really went the extra mile at that age. And my parents never pressured me to. My parents were
Mm.
so chill, like the least stage parents you will ever find.
How
They
did that influence you? That specifically, them being so chill about it? Because I can see, okay, so let's take it yin and yang. There's like two versions of this. One is parents are so chill that the consequence of like not doing well at it isn't very enforced. So some kids can be like, I can see someone saying, oh my goodness, like you even have like a sense of how much of this is like, the consequences of not practicing as much or all that, versus someone saying also like this has clearly been seen. They're so hardcore. They just kill the fun out of all of it. So I love that they did that, and I'm curious how that affected you.
Yeah, I mean, I think different kids, needs different things. Like I had a lot of self-motivation, even though I didn't really practice on my own, like extra, like the way that I started doing when I got older. I still like wanted to do everything and I wanted to succeed and I did, work hard. Um, and like I mean for a kid.
Yeah.
Like I would my parents kind of had a very laid back approach to raising me in particular. My
How did they
sisters,
raise you versus your siblings?
well, they just like I would always I remember like we had to do, for example, this like project where we all made dolls in like third grade that represented like different characters or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And everyone in my class brought in a doll that was like perfectly made by their parents.
Hmm.
And I was the one person who made my own doll, and it was horrible. It looked like crap. Like it was the worst doll in the
For
class.
some reason, I can totally see that being you. That's funny.
I insisted on doing it myself and not getting any help. Um,
That's amazing. You had this full sense of self, like I can do this on my own. Yeah.
yeah, and because I think because of that, my parents never really felt like they needed to push me. Um, yeah, and my sisters like struggle with some of that, and they have different strengths that I don't have. So,
Mhm.
we all have our strengths.
Always. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So once you were 16, what was the difference? How was your practice then? Did you get some teachers who were like, hey, this is how you practice? Because we talk about practicing all the time, but like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different theories about practicing. The one that I've heard the most that I think is the best is like that you should practice as a singer. I don't know if this is true for other
Mm.
instruments because I'm not an expert in those, but as a singer, the best thing to do is to practice in short, frequent intervals.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure you've heard that too.
Yeah. I mean, I studied opera as well, and I did some classical repertoire. Like I was telling you before, it's German. I, French is so difficult for me. Um, and my thing was that I was trying to learn, like, as you know me, I'm just kind of out there. And so I was like, I love this classical stuff. I want to hear classical with some sort of trap beat under with me doing some opera voice. I want to hear, you know, different Chinese drums, but me singing something sort of indie over that. I just want to hear weird things that you don't hear every day. And so when I went to my teacher, I went to the dean about it. It's like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Like, how do I practice it? How do I do it? They're like, good luck. I was like, okay. So I realized trying to learn what I was trying to do, you need to practice in the short intervals, but you also sort of need to, I guess you could, this is how I do it. This is what I do currently. Not saying everybody has to do it. This is what I do, and it works when I'm practicing. I study a voice. I take time to just get used to the sound in my head, listen to whatever it is, and then I do the analyzation process. The more analyzing I do with violin, with singing, with anything, the more I break it down in my head, like what I'm hearing. Once I've broken it down, I'm like, this sounds like this. Like I have a certain type of dialogue in my head. I'm like, the sound, if this is the warmth and this is the brightness, like with singing, I'm going, the brightness is completely pulled back and the person's doing this with their voice and they've pulled it. And so like, I'll have to send you some singers. There's a specific singer who sings it and it's just like, hmm, and she pulls it completely backwards. And because of her tone being so warm and I just have a horrible voice these days, um, it's pulled all the way back. And it's just like the most interesting sound. She only does it twice in the video. And I save just those clips, 15 seconds, and I just keep replaying it and I keep trying to analyze it. once I understand where its placement is in the voice, once I understand all those things, then I go, okay, now I'm going to practice it. And then I do it in like multiple short bursts. Then I take a break and I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I kind of look at, I'll get into that later. See, I have a lot in my head. Yeah, I approach it later and then I'm a little bit better at it. And I approach it later within the same day. So I don't, because what I used to do with my practice, this is back when I did violin. I'm like, oh, I'm going to lock myself in a room like Paganini, 4 hours here. You stop like learning after the first hour. Like after the first 30 minutes, especially as a child, like it's done. You need about 20 minutes in my experience. I need about 20 minutes of warm up before I even like nothing's coming, like anything's coming. And then once I hit the, I don't know, 20 minutes in, then it's like things are good. And then after about 20 minutes of doing that, then it's decline. So I need a little break. Do you have any sort of what's your amount of time before you start having like decline and you got to take a break?
It depends on
Because
like,
with voice, it's a little bit different.
yeah, because I mean, with your voice, like, you shouldn't practice for too long, too hard. It also depends on the room you're in. Like, there are certain practice rooms that are really suffocating and small, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's, there's a shorter time. I spend a shorter time practicing in those rooms because
And
it's
the
just,
air too. If the air is really like suffocating, oh my goodness, or like too, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it just feels like it's clogging your throat. Mhm.
yeah, and then you kind of feel like you need to push, and that's like really dangerous. So, yeah, I don't love those types of practice rooms, but
Have you ever tried this before? I'm curious. Now we're like sharing singer tips. This is cool. Um, we have a few more minutes left. Um, for you, have you ever tried laying on your back or stomach, whatever, standing? I don't know. Basically, you're super stationary
uh-huh.
and you try to sing as quietly as possible, like trying to do your scales, whatever you're trying to do. You're singing every little note so quietly as possible. I don't know. Have you ever tried that?
Um, Not exactly in that with that like specific intention, but I've definitely, stood still and lied still and like done like a messa di voce, like
Hmm.
song, but
I try
um
the pianissimo as much as possible sometimes because I've found that when it comes to like scales, trying to get that very nice connection in between the notes, especially between like chest and mix, I'm trying to get it to be so quiet so I can hear every little like where's the brightness, how much warmth is here. I want each note to sound with the same amount of brightness and warmth. So then I do it so quietly and I can hear. I don't know.
that's so cool. Yeah, I think having like the same amount of, you know, the same amount of intensity and kind of like the same sound from the bottom to top of your voice is really important, um, and makes it sound a lot more natural and beautiful in my opinion. But there's also a lot of, um, just like that's more like an opera thing, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah.
also a lot of value to hearing different sounds in different registers of your voice.
I
Um,
love how you said that because I was just thinking about that. Like a lot of famous people are famous specifically because their head voice sounds so different or their chest voice sounds so different than like their softer mix. Or it's interesting.
yeah.
I
I,
have a question for you. As you were getting older, as you were still doing your music and everything, was there a time where you had like that musician's crisis part? Did you ever have like a feeling like I'm enjoying this a lot, but I'm realizing that I'm good at something else, or I'm realizing that I like something else a little bit, and then having that battle of being like, should I even continue this? But you took it really far. I mean, you got a master's, so that's what I'm curious about. Like, how did you keep that motivation? Did you have it the entire time, or did you have some sort of battle yourself at all?
um, so I love writing and I grew up doing a lot of writing programs, and it was always kind of my thing was singing, and then my other thing was writing, and those were like the two things that I love to do, creative writing specifically. Um,
Oh,
so I
you're
did,
right.
yeah,
Sorry to cut you off. I'm so curious.
but I mean I do sometimes. I was a comp lit major in college actually.
Wow.
Um, So that was cool. But voice singing kind of took over as like the main one eventually later in high school. But I I mean, I always, you know, have, I've always had and always and still have days where I'm not sure it, like I doubt myself. I doubt, you know, I'm not sure like if I want to pursue this forever or whatnot. Um, and there are always moments when you think that and days when you think that. It's just some days, and then some days I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this. So I
Yeah,
don't
it's natural. It happens, you know?
mind is a little bit like it's overall the path that I have chosen and consistently chosen has been this path,
Mhm.
and I keep choosing to continue it, but that isn't to say that I haven't ever thought about not continuing it, you know.
If you weren't doing this and you were doing writing, what would you be writing? Because I'm sure you still write, but like,
Yeah, I
ew,
mean, probably I don't know if I would even be doing writing as a career.
really?
It would be part of a career, but
Oh,
um, like I think journalism's super cool, but I don't
I can
know.
tell.
Everyone wants to be a journalist, you know? So I don't know
The
if
cool thing about what you're doing now is that it's a hint of journalism, but really just a personality. And so you being the personality is the thing that keeps people coming back. And then you go, hey, here's some new information. Here's something new here. I'm going to present my audience with this person, that, and that. And that really builds like a connection with your audience, but also constantly keeps bringing something new. Of
that's so nice. Thank you.
course.
I hope
I only give genuine compliments here.
I just kind of started this whole interview thing like a month ago because I
Only a
was
month ago.
in the quarantine. And I was like,
Quarantine gave you like what you needed to try.
what?
Quarantine gave you that like that gusto to be like, I'm going.
Yeah, I was like, well, I've been wanting to kind of do something with my YouTube channel for a while because I saw that I had a bunch of subscribers and I had just posted singing videos. But I was like, I kind of feel like I want to do more, but I don't know what to do because I don't want to just sit there and like talk about myself because I feel like I don't know who would want to see that. I figured, why not let other people talk about what makes them interesting, and
Ah,
just kind of started getting a lot of ideas for people I know who are interesting and people I don't know. I started connecting with, like you.
yeah,
So
same.
yeah,
How did you? I was realizing this. I don't know how long we've been friends on Instagram. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember, but it feels like it's been a while.
I don't know.
Um, Me neither. I don't know. It's been a while. I've seen your face pop up a while, but I took a break from Instagram. Quick question. You're very open to new information. Where did that come from? Where do you think that came from?
The fact that I'm open to new information.
Yeah, you're very open to new information. You have a very balanced perspective. So when new information is coming in, you're constantly judging and going, oh, that's interesting, that's new. But you're not like hardcore flipping over or anything like that. You have a very good sense of who you are from, and this is just what I'm, picking up from you. You
Well,
have a relatively good sense of who you are. So when new information comes in, you're not challenged by it. It's not like an insecurity thing. It's just like, that's new. I didn't know that. Or you're like, I'm going to look into that, and then it helps you. I mean, you're constantly growing and learning. I try to live that way myself, so I can recognize when people have that as like a value that they care about.
I think I'm a little bit immature in the sense that I'm like a little bit childish in the way that
I
I
like.
think. We were kind of talking before about how children have really open minds, and I think that you know I never kind of I didn't grow out of that as much as most people do, and there are definitely negative sides to that. Like,
Mm,
um, yeah, I mean, there's a good thing about it, which is that I'm open-minded, but then there's also negative things about it, which is that, I'm a little bit gullible and naive, and I can like believe people sometimes, or
that's like a lot of people where they're super gullible.
too readily, you know.
I know what you mean. Just like, yeah, I'd say because I've dealt with that too before. I think I've kind of found a way to curb that a little bit because I judge who the person is that's giving me the information. Or so, like, is this and it's not okay. I'll word it like this. And I do this with my friends and stuff. Um, I have a certain way I like to live. My friends, they have their own ways that they like to live. If we're friends, I'm probably connecting similarly to how they like to live. I resonate with it because I'm doing something similar. I do have also people who live completely differently than I do. Different values, different everything. That's fine, and I can totally get with it. With that said, people that I'm closest with, I'm probably going to share my virtues and value systems. Now, when I'm bringing in someone new or connecting, and they're telling me some new information, I first look at how genuine they are, and also how truthful they are with their own sort of desires. So if that person has a way of living and they constantly betray what they're putting out, like, hey, I like this, but you clearly don't, and you don't show that you do, and you also don't act in that way, you're betraying your own virtues and value systems that you've showed me, you've showed multiple people. That person's information will just come lower to me. They're not going to come to me, and I'm not going to be like, oh wow. I'm going to be like, interesting. I'm not going to deny it because it could be true. It could be anything. But that's because it could be anything. I'm like, okay, I'll look into it. Seems like, so that's how I kind of cut it. I go, you don't seem to live what you're speaking. Let me see. And then, I reapproach it or I look it up myself. If it's not, if I see clearly that they live how they sort of portray, then I go, oh, even if this information isn't true, I was trying my best not to cough. Even if this information isn't true, you clearly believe it and you're living as if you do. That's enough for me to be like, you wouldn't do it if it's a respect thing. You wouldn't be doing it if you really didn't believe it's working for you. Mm-hmm. So then I trust in them, and so I trusted a little bit more. But yeah, that's my process for that. I don't know, does that make sense?
Because it's also there are different types of information, right? Like there's like information where like someone's telling you about themselves or telling you about
Yes.
or like giving you facts about a situation or and then there's information where it's like um, someone's presenting an opinion and they're giving you facts to back their opinion and those facts
Yes.
are meant have sources or you can actually like research those facts and figure out whether they're true for yourself. So I feel like when someone's presenting you with an opinion and the facts and evidence behind their opinion is searchable and you know confirmable, then it's definitely our responsibility to go and make sure that all of that's correct before accepting what they're saying.
Yeah. I accepted just that, like, thank you for telling me it. I trust in that. Let me look into it a little bit more. But yeah, it keeps you open. It also keeps you protected.
Totally,
Well,
totally.
thank you so much, Melanie, because we're just about hitting 4, and this was a great conversation. How do you feel?
I feel great. It was so nice talking to you again.
Great talking to you again as well. Please tell everybody what you got coming up and what you're excited to be, what you got planning. So what you're about to be releasing or anything, and what else you got planned for the, next couple months.
I have a bunch of interviews coming up that I'm releasing.
Okay.
And I have some exciting projects this summer I actually can't talk about yet, but
Ooh, okay.
everyone updated as soon as I can.
Fantastic. If y'all really like this type of stuff, we probably could do some more or whatever. I mean, that's the cool thing about it. It's very chill, relaxed. That's what I love about it. So
Nice.
thank you, Melanie, so much for coming back on, or technically coming on for the first time, because I came on yours first. All right, check her channel, everybody, please, because it's very good. She really
Thank,
cares about what she's doing, and you can see it in her work.
thank you so much.
Of
That
course. We'll keep
um,
in touch. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I
Sorry.
also love like how on time you are, like very, very
Well,
aware
thank
of
you. Yeah, I was like, should I text before the time or should I like? I feel bad, so I don't know. But I try to be relatively, it's chill. It's like I'm on time, but like it's whatever, you know.
Gotcha. All
Well,
right.
we'll be talking later. Keep in touch and thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye, y'all.